My boyfriend threw wine in my face at our anniversary dinner. His friends laughed. Someone recorded it. I walked out silently. The next morning, I found our joint account empty. He thought he'd humiliated me and escaped. He forgot one thing. I keep receipts. The Merlot hit my face before I processed his words. Cold wine dripped from my hair onto the white tablecloth, while Christopher's friends laughed. Actual laughter, not the nervous kind that might have saved this moment. Maybe if you spent less time at the clinic and more time at the gym, we wouldn't be here, he said, his voice carrying across Romano's dining room. Other diners turned to watch my humiliation unfold in real time. I sat frozen, wine staining my anniversary dress, while Nathan raised his phone to record. 2 years together, and this was how it ended, with documentation. "Chris, come on," someone muttered, but the damage was done. I stood slowly, wine still dripping from my chin. The receipt from our dinner lay crumpled beside my purse, $24 for the bottle he'd just thrown at me. 2 years of splitting everything equally, and he chose this moment to make a statement about who paid for what. "We're done," I whispered. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Yeah, we are." I walked out of Romano's with wine in my hair and something cold settling in my chest. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something sharper, more useful. Calculation. The bank app showed $847 where $7,347 should have been. I refreshed it 3 times before calling the automated line, hoping for a system error. Recent withdrawal, $6,500, October 15th, authorized user. My hands shook as I pulled up our joint account history. He'd been planning this for weeks, small transfers, testing the waters, then the big withdrawal yesterday, the day before our anniversary dinner, the day before he humiliated me. I called Jenna. "He stole our savings," I said when she answered. "What do you mean stole?" "Cleaned out our joint account, $6.5 grand. Gone." Jenna went quiet. Then, "That calculating bastard. He planned the whole thing." I stared at my device, scrolling through months of transactions. Every bill split exactly in half. Every dinner calculated to the penny. Every shared expense documented with mechanical precision. And then this, surgical theft, followed by public destruction. "I need to see you," I said. "Come over, now." I grabbed my keys and drove to Jenna's apartment, my mind already working. Christopher thought he was clever, thought he'd destroyed me completely. Financial ruin and social humiliation in one night. He was wrong. I still had the receipts. I still had access to his email until he changed the passwords, and I still had something he'd forgotten about in his careful planning. I had Billy. Billy listened without interrupting while I explained everything. My brother had that stillness he got before making decisions, the same expression he'd worn before confronting our stepfather about the bruises. $6,500, he said finally. Plus the humiliation, plus Nathan recording it all. Jenna paced her kitchen, fury radiating from every step. "We need to destroy him." "We need to be smart," Billy corrected. "Revenge is a dish best served calculated." I looked between them, Jenna's rage and Billy's cold planning. This was why I'd called them both. Jenna would push me forward. Billy would make sure I didn't fall off the cliff. "What do you know about his work situation?" Billy asked. "He's been bragging about some promotion, senior account manager. Says he's got his boss wrapped around his finger." Billy nodded slowly. "And you said he's been inappropriate with the new intern?" "Sarah, 19 years old, fresh out of high school. He makes comments about her appearance, finds excuses to touch her shoulder. Classic predatory behavior." "Documented?" "I have texts where he brags about it. Thought it was funny." Billy's smile was winter cold. "It's not going to be funny much longer." Jenna stopped pacing. "What's the plan?" "First, we get the money back. Then we make sure he understands the consequences of theft and harassment." I felt something unlock in my chest. Not forgiveness. I was done with that. This was justice, measured and delivered by people who actually cared about me. When do we start? Tomorrow morning. Billy knocked on Christopher's apartment door at 7 a.m. I waited in the hallway, listening. "We need to talk," Billy said when Christopher answered. "About what? Your psycho sister?" Wrong answer. I heard the sound of Billy stepping inside, the door closing, muffled voices, then Christopher's tone shifting from arrogant to nervous. "I don't know what she told you. She told me you stole $6,500 from their joint account. She told me you planned it. She told me you humiliated her in public to cover your theft. It was my money too." "No, it wasn't." The conversation went quiet. I pressed my ear to the door. Billy's voice, steady and calm. "You're going to transfer every penny back to her personal account. Today. Then you're going to give me your spare access card to her apartment because you don't live there anymore." "You can't make me." "I can make you do a lot of things, Christopher. The question is whether you want to find out what those things are." 10 minutes later, Billy emerged with Christopher's keycard and a promise that the money would be returned by noon. Christopher stood in his doorway, pale and shaken. "This isn't over," Christopher called out. Billy turned back. "You're right. It's not." I walked into Morrison & Associates at 2 p.m., wearing my best professional smile and carrying a folder of evidence. The receptionist directed me to Mr. Morrison's office. "I'm here about Christopher Daniels," I told his boss. "I believe you should know about some concerning behavior." Morrison looked skeptical until I opened the folder. Text screenshots where Christopher bragged about training the new intern. The receipt from Romano's, where he'd charged our anniversary dinner to the company card while claiming it was a client meeting. Bank statements showing he'd been skimming from the petty cash fund. "These are serious allegations," Morrison said. "They're documented facts. I also have witness testimony about his treatment of Sarah Chen, your intern." Morrison's expression darkened. "Sarah came to HR last week with concerns." "Then you know this isn't an isolated incident." I left the folder on his desk and walked out. By 4 p.m., Christopher was escorted from the building with his personal items in a box. By 5 p.m., Nathan called to tell me Christopher was freaking out about being fired. I felt nothing but satisfaction. Jenna texted, "How'd it go?" "Professional courtesy," I replied. "Delivered." The money appeared in my account at 5:47 p.m. Every penny, plus $50 in interest fees he'd had to pay for the emergency transfer. Justice tasted better than I'd expected. I changed the locks on Monday morning. The locksmith was efficient and discreet, installing new deadbolts while I watched from my kitchen window. When he finished, I held the fresh keys in my palm. Warm metal, clean edges, untouched by Christopher's hands. My device buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Christopher, probably using a friend's cell. "You destroyed my life," he said when I answered. "I documented your choices. There's a difference. I lost my job, my apartment, everything. You stole from me. You harassed a 19-year-old intern. You humiliated me in public for sport." I walked to my window, looking down at the street where he'd parked so many times. "Those were your decisions. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I hung up and blocked the number. Then I called Billy. "It's done," I said. He got the message. "Good. How are you feeling?" I considered the question. The apartment felt larger somehow, cleaner. The silence was mine now, not shared or negotiated. I'd reclaimed my space, my money, my dignity. "Stronger," I said finally. Billy laughed. "That's my sister." After we hung up, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table. No more splitting bills, no more calculating every expense, no more walking on eggshells around someone who saw my vulnerabilities as ammunition. Christopher had taught me something valuable in the end. I was capable of more than I'd known. More calculation, more strategy, more ruthless protection of what mattered. I sipped my coffee and smiled. The taste of freedom was even better than revenge. The next few weeks passed in a blur of quiet satisfaction. I established new routines: morning coffee without the sound of Christopher's aggressive phone calls, evening walks without having to account for my time, grocery shopping for one without judgment about every item in my cart. The apartment felt larger somehow, as if his absence had physically expanded the space. I started saying yes to things again. Sarah's book club, which I'd avoided for months because Christopher always had something snide to say about those wine-drunk housewives. A pottery class at the community center that I'd bookmarked but never pursued. Small things that felt revolutionary after so long under his watchful, critical eye. 3 weeks after he moved out, I received a text from an unknown number. My stomach clenched automatically, old habits. But when I opened it, it was from Jennifer, the woman from his office I'd spoken to during my investigation. "Coffee sometime? I have things to tell you that you deserve to know." We met the following Saturday at a cafe downtown, one I'd never been to with Christopher. Jennifer looked different outside the corporate environment. Younger, more relaxed in jeans and a sweater. She ordered a lavish caramel macchiato with extra whip, the kind of indulgence Christopher would have made passive-aggressive comments about. "I wasn't sure if I should reach out," she began, stirring her drink nervously. "But after what happened with the promotion situation, I felt like, God, I don't even know where to start." I waited, letting her find her words. I'd learned the power of silence during those weeks of careful listening and planning. "Christopher wasn't just manipulative with you," she said finally. "He pulled the same shit at work, made people feel like they owed him, like he was doing them favors when really he was setting them up to fail. I watched him sabotage 3 different colleagues over the past year, including me." She told me about the promotion that should have been hers, how Christopher had systematically undermined her work, taken credit for her ideas, and then played the concerned mentor when she was passed over. About how he'd done similar things to others, creating a toxic dynamic where people were afraid to speak up because he was so good at making it seem like he was the reasonable one. "The thing is," Jennifer continued, "when word got around about what happened with his accounts, how everything unraveled so quickly, people started connecting dots, started sharing stories. It turns out a lot of us had pieces of a bigger picture." I thought about the meticulous way Christopher had isolated me from friends, made me doubt my own perceptions, convinced me that every relationship problem was my fault. The same patterns, apparently, played out in every area of his life. "He's been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation," Jennifer said. "Multiple people came forward once they realized they weren't alone. It's like, once one person was brave enough to speak up, the floodgates opened." I felt something shift inside me, a final piece of tension releasing. I hadn't destroyed Christopher's career, I'd simply removed one carefully placed support beam, and the whole unstable structure had collapsed under its own weight. We talked for 2 hours. Jennifer told me about the therapy she'd started, how she was learning to trust her own judgment again. I told her about the pottery class, about reading books without someone commenting on my choices, about the simple pleasure of buying expensive olive oil without justification. Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because Christopher was suffering, I realized I didn't actually care about that anymore, but because I finally understood that none of it had ever been about me. His need to control, to diminish, to manipulate, those were his deficiencies, not mine. That evening, I called my sister for the first time in months. We'd grown distant during my relationship with Christopher, partly because he'd made subtle comments about her being dramatic and attention-seeking, and partly because I'd been ashamed of how small my world had become. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Sarah told me what happened. How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I said, and meant it. "Actually, I think I might be the best I've been in years." We made plans for dinner the following week. She wanted to hear everything, she said, but only if I wanted to share. No pressure, no judgment, just sisterly curiosity and support. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, My living room now, decorated with things I actually liked instead of Christopher's minimalist aesthetic, and realized something profound had shifted. I wasn't just free from Christopher. I was free from the version of myself that had accepted his treatment. The woman who had calculated every expense, who had walked on eggshells, who had made herself smaller and smaller to fit into the space he'd allotted her. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who had learned to trust her instincts, to value her own worth, to protect what mattered with fierce intelligence. Someone who had discovered that she was capable of strategic thinking when it counted, of patience when it served her goals, of decisive action when the moment was right. I raised my wine glass, good wine, the kind Christopher had deemed unnecessarily expensive, in a private toast, to new beginnings, to hard-won wisdom, to the beautiful, terrifying freedom of becoming exactly who I was meant to be.